Hi, my name is Ákos Menyhei and you are watching Primus Trust Corporation's knowledge channel about the Hungarian trust. Primus Trust Corporation is a registered and licensed trust provider company in Hungary. We provide Hungarian trusts for our customers. But wait a minute, isn't Hungary a continental jurisdiction highly influenced by the German law? Yes, it is. And isn't it true that the Germans does not recognize the trust? It's true as well. Nevertheless, 3 years ago, in 2014, the Hungarian parliament introduced the trust to the Hungarian legal system. 2014 March, the Hungarian civil code was introduced. It's a new civil code and it contains as a contractual relationship the trust itself. Parallel with the implementation of this new civil code, a Trustees Act was implemented as well. It deals with the details, obligations and work of the professional trustees, as well as the registration of the non-professional trusts and the licensing procedure of the professional trustees. So, how it works? A trust is a legal instrument whereby the settlor or the grantor transfers trust assets to the trustee, who is then bound to manage the trust assets for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Under an Anglo Saxon type of trust, including the US or the UK, both the trustee and the beneficiary obtain ownership over the trust asset. While the trustee holds the legal title, appearing as owner of the trust assets to the outside world, the beneficiary exercises equitable ownership, also known as a beneficial ownership. Beneficial ownership entails limited rights for the beneficiary, compelling the trustee to hold the trust assets exclusively for the benefit of the beneficiary. The structure works that the settlor or grantor, in the US usually called it grantor, transfer the assets, the ownership rights of the assets to the trustee. The trustee holds the assets as the legal owner, and the trustee is registered in the ownership registries. Parallel with this ownership, there is another existing ownership by the beneficiary, and the beneficiary holds the beneficial title of the ownership. So it results that within the trust relationship, there is a split ownership, a legal and equitable or beneficial ownership. Under the Hungarian trust, it works a little bit differently because, as I mentioned, Hungary is a continental jurisdiction and there is no such a split ownership. So, due to the numerus clausus deriving from the old Roman law, it is impossible to split the ownership to two types of ownership because the ownership itself is absolute. So we cannot split in Hungary the ownership to legal ownership and equitable ownership. But how is it possible to solve the problem to set up a trust? How we can guarantee the rights of the settlor or the beneficiaries? So there is in rem ownership, which is the ownership itself, and there are in personam rights guaranteed by a contractual obligation. So, under the Hungarian type of trust, only the trustee obtains the ownership of the trust assets. While the trustee is the sole owner, the beneficiary also holds certain rights over the trust assets. A Hungarian trust deed is a form of a contract, a mandate type of contract, which compels the trustee to hold the trust assets exclusively for the benefit of the beneficiary. So this ownership is regulated by the trust deed. It provides the ownership limits. At least there are two limits of this ownership. It is limited by time because the trustee will be the owner of the trust assets only for a certain foreseeable period of time. Secondly, the settlor may limit the rights, the ownership rights of the trustee in the trust deed, so may provide rules to the trustee who holds the ownership of the trust assets, limiting those rights the trustee may exercise. For example, the settlor may forbid the transfer of the trust assets from the assets. So in this case, the trustee is not allowed to transfer the ownership, except if the trustee transferred the ownership during the ultimate distribution to the beneficiaries. So the whole legal solution contains and means that the beneficiary has a contractual rights against the trustee in relation to the trust assets. The difference in approach can be attributable to the fact that under a Hungarian law, just like in other civil law jurisdictions, ownership is absolute and cannot be split, as I described earlier. Therefore, there is no distinction made between legal and beneficial title. So the basic structure is very similar to the English type of trust. There is a settlor, transfer of the ownership to the trustee. The trustee holds the assets as his own. The trustee appears in the registration, so the outside world will see the trustee as owner, but the beneficiary won't hold equitable title on the trust assets, but has certain contractual rights. I will describe later in a different video these rights. From practical viewpoint, however, the Hungarian trust thus stands out in one aspect, and this is asset protection. The main goal of asset protection is to structure the ownership of the interested parties' assets in a way so that they protect it from any prospectable foreseeable claims. This can be achieved by turning the assets to the parties owns into assets that the party does not own, while at the same time ensuring that the party, the transferring party, still has the control over the assets. The assets are protected and the party retains the ability to transfer the assets back to itself or to himself, herself. Ideally, the structure also optimized for tax purposes. In this video series, in the next episode, I will provide you detailed information and description of a Hungarian trust and about the following segments. So the settlor, the transfer of the trust assets, the trustee, the trust asset itself, the beneficiary, the distribution of the trust assets and the trust yield, and I will talk about the protector as well, because it's possible to appoint a protector under the Hungarian legal system. Thank you for watching this series. See you next time. Bye bye.